if you're in the corporate space or even if you're an entrepreneur, network, because your social network will really get you through those times when you need them most. I had 40 interviews within the span of 2 weeks after getting let go from my job.
There's actually so much value that I've learned from entrepreneurs that I've brought back into the corporate world that's helped me get promoted and move up. I want to welcome Megan to the Break Room podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So with Megan, I want to dive deeper into, you have quite an impressive background. If I can quickly describe for our listeners, you were in the corporate space for pretty much a decade, a little longer, in business development, sales, account executive, which we're going to dive into. And now you've built a really successful business as an entrepreneur. So the theme here that I want to dig into is transitions, because you have really paved such an amazing path for yourself, but it hasn't been just straightforward. So I want to go back in time to the time when you were account executive and you started feeling that shift of wanting to make a transition. When was that? What was that feeling like? And talk to our listeners about that time when you felt like you needed to make that transition.
So I think that a lot of us experienced this with the pandemic. In 2020, I was the top performer in my sales organization. I was really doing well, climbing the ladder, was on the verge of a promotion, and then the world shut down. And it was then that I realized that the world isn't as secure in the corporate world as I thought. Like, no matter if I'm hitting quotas and making these numbers, it doesn't matter if the company is no longer able to function. So I was selling lunch programs to corporations at the time. And with people not going into the office, there was really no need for our product.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where our company laid off the entire sales organization except for myself and my counterpart in San Francisco.
Wow.
And they held on to us as long as possible. So we got an extra couple months out of it. But then when there was really no looking up for the foreseeable future, we ultimately were let go. And it was one of those moments where I had to really take a look and say, is this what I want? Is this kind of safe route, or quote unquote safe route, really even safe anymore? But I have to say that I really wasn't ready to jump into a business of my own. So I went back into corporate. I played the corporate game a little bit longer. And then you know what? Flash forward into 2023, I had just announced my pregnancy to my company. And after that, literally a week later, I was a part of another mass layoff. The entire sales team again. I've never heard of 2 times this happening to someone with the entire sales team, but the entire sales team was laid off. So again, it was one of those things where I felt like the universe was trying to tell me something, and it was up to me to really listen to it. And instead of thinking, why does this keep happening to me? I instead really embraced this, okay, why is this happening for me? And I moved forward with that. So to answer your question, it was 2 moments really that really solidified the fact that I needed to really take a bet on myself and create something of my own.
I love that. I want to dig into that period of layoffs because it is happening across the board right now more than I've been a recruiter for more than 10 years. I have never seen such a market that is constantly just turnover of layoffs. So I want to dig into that from a human perspective, because so many people have been laid off and are sitting in that right now. I want to know from you, like, you obviously, we went through it pretty quick in a few minutes here of these transitions where you were laid off, found a new job. But can you talk to us a little bit about that time when the layoff was shared with you? How do you move forward? What are some tips for listeners that if you're in it, you've been laid off? Of course, the first thing that, you said is you turn it on yourself and you're like, what did I do wrong? But I'm curious of like, how did you work through that and keep moving forward?
I would say that it actually starts even before a potential layoff. I was able to have quite a few conversations after my layoffs because of the connections that I made. So I would say that if you're in the corporate space, or even if you're an entrepreneur, network, because your social network will really get you through those times when you need them most. But you can't just turn it on all of a sudden and go into LinkedIn and start chatting away saying, yes, I need a job. That's not how it works.
No, people are not going to be receptive to that.
No, and unfortunately, I've seen it too many times. So it really is about building your own little internal community and building a brand for yourself. So that way, when something does like this happens, that you really have people to turn to. And I have to say that you also need to be putting yourself forward and helping those individuals in return, because it's not just a take mentality here. It's really a give to get. Like what comes around goes around. But as far as like a mental standpoint, I think that's a really good time for you to take a step back and prioritize what's really important to you. Brittany, I'll tell you, when I got laid off the second time, I actually went into panic mode because I was pregnant. I was thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to do? I
Yeah,
need my benefits. I need my maternity leave. Who's going to hire me when I'm about to give birth? And do I keep this a secret? Or do I be transparent? Like all these different questions
I
as you're
can't even
navigating,
imagine. Yeah.
yeah, as you're navigating this new stage of life. And I actually, because I had built up this network, I had 40 interviews within the span of 2 weeks after getting let go from my job. But what was really interesting is that I kept having conversation after conversation, and it wasn't resonating. There was something deeper in me that said, you know what? I'm not meant to be here. Yes, these people are willing to help me, but I don't think this is the kind of help that I'm wanting to receive at this point. So it's really, I got really clear on what my priorities were, what I valued, and I realized at that point that I was not going to return to corporate. That instead I was going to take a chance on myself, and what better time to do it than when I'm about to have a baby.
I want to go back to the networking piece because so many professionals really struggle with this. To your point, a lot of people believe that networking is, I need a job, I'm going to ask. And then they come to me and are curious why they're not getting responses. And immediately I say, well, you're asking for something. So I want to go back to your thoughts on networking. How did you start to build that network?
Well, first of all, today I kind of call myself this connector, and kind of those old school telephone operators that you'd call and they'd pick up the phone and you ask to be connected to someone. Instead of actually connecting someone via call, I'm connecting people with people and resources these days. So that's kind of just always been something that I was naturally good at. I have this innate desire to connect with humans. I want to know everything about you, come from a sales background. So if you're doing sales the right way, you should be listening more than you're speaking. And that's one of my superpowers, is that I'm a really great listener. So I'm genuinely curious about the person on the other end. And it's not about me, it's about them. So when I go into every interaction, I really want to understand that person at all different levels, kind of what makes them tick, and also how I can best help them. It's whenever you're going into these networking conversations. So whether that you're reaching out via LinkedIn, you're scheduling a coffee chat, you're getting together in person. If you go in with a selfish mentality thinking, what am I going to get from this conversation? Then you're doing networking wrong. You need to be able to come in and think about what kind of value I can provide to this person. In my opinion, what comes around goes around. And if you keep putting that good out there, the good will come back to you. And that's exactly what happened to me there. So, what I did is I actually was part of a company where we were a networking company. We were a learning and development company where we specialized in development programs, and a portion of that was a networking component. So that was really where I had those light bulb moments that I really needed to do a better job at creating my own internal brand and external brand, and making sure that I was connecting with people outside of my organization. I know you're really big on LinkedIn. At that time, I really was too. So I was making sure that I was showing up consistently, adding value, and making sure that I wasn't just posting on people's
Mhm.
feeds. I was actually having conversations with them. We would be able to find things that we were connecting over, and we would take those conversations offline and actually do things like this, where we were able to meet face to face virtually or in person if it allowed for it. And we just got to know each other. And what's interesting, like how you and I met, is that it doesn't stop with just the two people. Then let's say I meet someone else, I'm just raving about this person that I just met, and
Mhm.
it's just the domino effect, and you just are able to increase your circle just because you put yourself out there, you were kind, and you were really making sure that you were providing value rather than just thinking, what am I going to get from this interaction?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest takeaway, listeners, is that value piece. And I love what you said about listening. So often as a recruiter, I'm getting paragraphs at me of someone's background, and I'm like, You could have actually just asked a simple question and listened, to my response. So I think that's such a skill that so many people overlook and just go directly to asking. So one of the things I want to dive into then is, again, focused on transitions. I want to hear a little bit more about the transition to becoming an entrepreneur. And this is really important. I want my listeners to know you do not have to have a business to be an entrepreneur in the sense of a mindset. I think there's actually so much value that I've learned from entrepreneurs that I've brought back into the corporate world that's helped me get promoted and move up. My question is, when you went from being in the corporate world to growing your business, what are those skills that you leaned into to even just get started?
Because we're talking about my sales background now, I think that's actually very appropriate because I started a podcast when I was still in corporate. This is before my second layoff. And it was because I knew that I eventually wanted to start my own thing, but I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. So I actually took a step back. I started to think about, okay, what is it that you enjoy? What is it that you're naturally good at? And what is it that just you could show up and do every single day? And so, again, I was a really good listener. I'm naturally curious about people and I knew how to prospect. So I decided, okay, why not use all of my knowledge in sales and be able to interview women who came before me, who took the leap, jumped out of corporate and started their own businesses. So there was a little bit of a selfish component here because I wanted to learn from the other women, but I thought, why not take this information and share it with the other people? So my approach with starting my entire business was from my sales background because it was I put together that prospect list of every single woman that I knew that had started a business. I put together these tailored emails and video notes to these individuals to make sure that when I was asking them to be on my podcast, it wasn't just about me, that they understood why I was reaching out to them specifically and making sure that they understood the mission of really what this is about, because I'm a very mission driven person and I care about everyone, which is corny as that sounds. It was just being able to have these conversations and knowing the right way to go about the messaging to be able to get people to say yes, and understanding that rejection is going to happen. And I had plenty of rejection in my sales days. And it's one of those things where I just can't take it personally anymore. So that skill alone, being able to handle a rejection, has helped me so much as an entrepreneur.
I couldn't agree more about the rejection piece. It's a space, whether you're being rejected in your own business or for a promotion or a job, there's there's no roadmap or toolkit for handling rejection, but it is probably the biggest component that's going to push you kind of through your path with that resilience. I also love that you focused on what you're already good at. So many professionals don't necessarily recognize what they're good at sometimes. And I think that can feel overwhelming to think through, like, what am I good at? What are my strengths?
Much like if you're not aware of what your superpowers are, what you can do is reach out to the people that are closest to you and ask them, what if you were to put it in your own words, what do you think I'm naturally good at? Like, what are the first things that you think of when you think of me? And that feedback sometimes allows you to see things that you're not seeing in yourself because they come so naturally to you that sometimes you're blinded by it. So getting some outsider's opinion and recognizing, okay, what are the commonalities here? What are the themes that people are saying? Maybe those are my superpowers because we all have them. It's so natural to us that we don't recognize that, okay, this isn't easy for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. But so often we downplay our strengths as, oh, that's not even a strength. That's just something I do all the time. But to your point, for a lot of other people looking in, that is a strength to be like, yeah, actually, most people are not good listeners. I love this exercise, by the way. So for listeners, like, if you don't need to do a fancy assessment, ask some friends, ask, people that you work with. I love this so much. It's such a good way to get
And
feedback.
it's interesting too because we've been able to interview quite a few women, and there's been a few women that previously were stay-at-home moms and then their kids left the nest, and so they were thinking about, okay, what am I going to do now? And it was interesting because there was one conversation that really stood out, and she started her own business and she started to think about, oh, I already was expressing entrepreneurial qualities throughout my entire stint as a mom. I was running the PTA board meetings. I was like planning all the different activities. I was the CEO of the house. I was making sure that everything ran properly. So even if you're not in just a standard like corporate 9 to 5 job, there are qualities that you possess that are just in your day to day that maybe you don't even realize that you're just naturally good at.
One other piece I want to transition into is this piece of becoming a mom and navigating the space of being an entrepreneur, being an ambitious female. Talk to me a little bit about that transition, because I definitely am in it as well, having 2 little ones. And as we were talking, we started to unpack just being moms and that transition and that identity. So can you talk to our listeners that are going through that transition, whether you're thinking of becoming a parent, you are a parent, or maybe you're moving or have another big life thing ahead, what you were going through as an entrepreneur and then becoming a mom?
So I will say that a lot of my identity was tied up in my corporate job. And so when I lost my corporate job, I felt like a part of my identity was just scratched overnight. So then I had to really embrace a new identity of, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. But what does that mean? And then on top of that, I then got a new identity. I'm a mom. What does that mean? So I was going through all of these identity shifts at the same time. And some days it was a little bit overwhelming because I wasn't able to put my title and my worth and just sum up everything as, well, I'm in sales. No, I'm so much more than that now.
Yeah.
So how do you really just sum that up into a quick sentence that's relatable? Because I really struggled with the term, oh, I'm just a mom. I'm not just a mom. There's so much more to me. But sometimes you just don't know how to communicate that. So I would say that becoming a parent has been the most rewarding thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life. I would not change that for any second. But it does come with a learning curve. We don't come with an instruction manual on how to be a parent or how to raise these children. There's a lot of figuring it out as you go. And I think that my biggest piece of advice if you're considering going through this transition or if you're in that transition is to just be adaptable and go with the flow, to not put the pressure on yourself to be this version of perfect, because let me tell you, perfect doesn't exist. And if you're striving for it, you're going to be very dissatisfied. So for me, I've just been able to really kind of slow down in my life. And because you mentioned that I have the achiever tendencies, I was constantly running and just kind of clawing my way up that corporate ladder, chasing the titles and the money. But what motherhood has taught me is that yes, the money is important, but it's not what fuels me. What fuels me is the moments that matter. It's being able to be home with my child and still make that income. It's being able to not miss all of the different moments that he's been able to have and all of these different life milestone moments, and to be able to make an impact. And so those are what has really mattered to me. So if you're in this transition, I would just really take a step back and really think about, okay, what are my priorities, and make sure that you're creating a life that really fits around on that list that you do put together.
Yeah. There's something you said that gave me chills, because who we are doesn't always mean that it's all of our identity in our careers. This is a podcast on careers, and I know that, but it's also a moment for us all to reflect and recognize that when you are laid off or when you are through that transition, you are not your job title. And I was in a group recently, and the question was to introduce all of ourselves with, who are you? And that was the prompt. And everybody answered it differently because everyone had a different identity around their career. So some people introduced themselves as a mom to start. Some people said, this is my title. Some people started with, this is where I live and I'm a traveler and I actually live in Paris. That's who I am. It was very fascinating. If you were asked who you are, how do you answer it? Because I want you to think about that is, are you comfortable with that answer and how can you change it? I could talk so much more again about so many different parts of your career and diving deeper into these. But the last thing I want to leave our listeners with is just a piece of advice that you have been given. What is the biggest piece of advice that you pass on the most and that you find, again, most impactful?
If there's something that is on your heart that just keeps showing up and showing up and showing up and you really can't push down, it's there for a reason. And don't overthink it. I would say take the first step. Don't be afraid to do it messy, because the first step truly is the hardest and things get easier and easier from there. So listen to what you're being called to do, go forward and And again, just do it messy.
Oh my gosh, Megan, I love that. As you said that, I felt like I literally felt so much of part of me, like all these things that I've been thinking about. And I'm like, yeah, don't push them down.
There's something that all of us want to do, whether it's finding a new career, whether it's becoming a parent, whether it's starting your own business, traveling the world. There's something that's calling you for more. And like,
Yeah.
it's up to us to bring that to fruition. We're getting in our own way. So like, just push that little part of you aside and just move forward.
I love how you say live in the messy, because so many professionals come to me they had this idea of their path forward, which I'm sure you had an idea of your path forward. I did as well. And it looks nothing like this, but I absolutely love that. But we're taught so often to pick a major, then you're supposed to stick on that path. And to me, the best part of my career is that I followed none of that.
I'm the definition of messy entrepreneur these days. But you know what? It's working for me. And the people that you surround yourself with recognize that they're all trying to do it too. And we're all human. And I think that speaking of like networking and connections, when you just show up as yourself and just bring the messy and the beautiful, chaotic mess, it's authentic and people relate to that. And that's
Yeah.
what people are craving these days is authenticity and relatability. So just show up as yourself.
Thank you for showing up today. Can you tell listeners where to find you, where to come to you and join your community so they can connect with you and keep following you along?
Absolutely. Well, I also have a podcast. It's called the Self Starter Podcast, a community for women that are building businesses while also juggling all the chaos of life at home. So you can go to selfstarter.com/or / together. And then you can also bigger on Instagram these days, but you can also find me every now and then on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. And I'm part of your community as well. It's such a great group of women. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, Megan. There's so much wisdom here for our listeners. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.